Alright, this is Block 3, Progressives in Power, Part 2, Who Were the Progressives, and the section starting with Herbert Spencer. This is one of the most important parts of this entire block. If you understand what this is, you will understand the entirety of progressivism, including modern progressivism. And these are the beliefs that come from this guy, Herbert Spencer. Herbert Spencer was an Englishman. He developed a philosophy based on the theory of evolution. And his theory, he believed that the purpose of progressivism and the purpose of government and the purpose of society was to improve everybody on a scientific basis. What could every individual do to improve themselves scientifically, and therefore what could society do to improve itself scientifically? Herbert Spencer is kind of the perfect example, the epitome of a well-educated, urbane, sophisticated, intelligent progressive. And he tries to develop this system where all human actions would be explained rationally, all human actions are going to be explained scientifically, and all human actions can be molded by society to improve the individual. This belief that all human beings can be improved, in order to do that, requires a group of experts. How are you going to improve society? Well, the progressives believed that you improved society through expert scientific analysis, expert scientific rigor, expert scientific explanations of things, and then expert scientific advice as to what would science say to do to improve this person, this group, this race, this nation. It is all based on a fundamental belief, not in God, but a fundamental belief in the power of science and progress. And progress is, of course, the root of the word progressivism. The progressives were also technocrats. And if we look at the word technocrat or technocracy, which we will blow up here, break it down. C-R-A-C-Y is government by, and techno is some kind of scientific expertise. Technocracy is government by scientific expert. And if you demand a government by experts, a technocracy, you are saying, in the sense, that society is too complex for the average person. That the average person cannot understand the complexities of modern society. The average person cannot be counted upon to solve complicated problems. And that if you want to solve complicated problems, what do you need? You need technocrats. You need disinterested experts who will scientifically look at a problem. Let's say the problem is poverty. Well, you solve poverty by scientifically analyzing the causes of poverty, and then you apply scientific answers to say, this is how to solve poverty scientifically. This belief in science and progress and rationalism is at the heart of the progressive movement. And that politics, the normal give and take of politics, should give way to rule by experts. Once the society says, let's solve poverty, after that, it was out of the politicians' hands. And the progressives wanted it in the hands of educated, scientific experts. It is a profoundly undemocratic point of view that we should be ruled by scientific experts. But it's attractive. Everyone likes science and scientists do really cool things. But it's profoundly undemocratic. And that rule by experts implies that the average person, the average citizen, simply cannot comprehend, explain, or solve serious societal problems. The technocrats were believers in what's called pragmatism. Pragmatism is a philosophy, and scientists should be pragmatists. A pragmatist is a person who doesn't care about politics. A pragmatist is a person who doesn't care about theories, doesn't care about ideals. A pragmatist is a philosophy which only focuses on outcomes and effects. Pragmatism can be summed up like this. Pragmatism asks, okay, what works? And if it works, do it. If poverty can be solved by this application of this and this introduction of that and this money on this, if that works, and if you can prove it scientifically, in a paper, in a lab, in a speech, if it works, do it. Pragmatists supposedly are only interested in scientific debate and experimentation. If it's a Democrat idea and it works, do it. If it's a Republican idea and it works, do it. This is an attractive idea. Who wouldn't want government to be pragmatic? If it works, let's do it. The problem obviously lies in the fact that the technocrats and the pragmatists themselves are human beings with preferences and biases and all the things that go into making us human. What makes pragmatists a particularly snooty and snotty class of human beings is because they think they are above all of that. But in reality, they never were. And their theories as to what worked also were based on a certain outlook on the world. But technocracy and pragmatism go hand in hand. Technocracy is the belief in rule by experts, and technocrats are supposed to be pragmatists, believing and doing only what scientifically works. Pragmatism is he developed this philosophy by a guy by the name of William James. All these guys all look the same. They're either bald or they have really cool beards. There's William James. William James was not only the founder of pragmatism, he's one of the founders of modern psychology, who attempted to apply technocratic methods to psychology, to treat it as a science and not a philosophy. So there's William James. Now, these technocrats, in an increasingly industrial age and an increasingly mechanized and machine-driven age, find kind of their hero, their Bible, in this guy. And this guy is Frederick Winslow Taylor. There he is, Frederick Winslow Taylor. Frederick Winslow Taylor wrote a book. Lots of these progressives write books, because if it works in a book, it has to obviously work in the real world. And Frederick Winslow Taylor wrote a book in 1911 called Scientific Management. Take something like a factory and run it along scientific principles. This is the same sort of stuff that we have been talking about. Rule by experts. Frederick Winslow Taylor proposed a way to increase industrial output by regulating and scientifically looking at every task in a factory. And here's a good picture. This is a picture of telephone operators at a New York telephone office. Frederick Taylor would be the guy who organized all the efficiency. These girls took calls from one part. This girl took a call from another part of town. This girl took a call from another part of town. If you want another example visually, here's another perfect example. Scientific management. We're going to talk about this when we talk about the 1920s. This is the factory that's building, or it's going to be as soon as it loads up. We'll try another one. This is the factory that's building Model T Fords. It's very scientific. It's very efficient. Every single person on the line has one job. Every guy screws in the light bulb. The next guy screws in the other light bulb. The third guy puts on the hood. It's efficient. It's raises output. It makes the factory owners wealthier. It makes the workers wealthier. The factory owners can afford to pay them more. But the cost of this is it took things that used to be done by skilled craftsmen and turned factory workers into automatons. Imagine working 8 or 9 hours a day doing nothing all day, every day, but screwing a headlight onto the front of a Model T Ford. It's more efficient, it creates wealth, but at a high human cost. But this is progressivism. How are we going to progress? How are we going to apply science and technology and scientific theory to everything in the world around us? Frederick W. Taylor, one of the architects, if you will, of the progressive world. The next word is a name, William Graham Sumner, who wrote a book called What the Social Classes Owe to One Another. Sumner was an economist and a sociologist. He was another believer in social Darwinism, so another believer in technocracy, and he believed that democratic government could not do anything to improve society. He believed that only rule by experts outside of the democratic process could do that. Another believer in social Darwinism and progressivism and eugenics and all of those things was the Reverend Josiah Strong. Let's see if we can find a picture of this guy. Josiah Strong. Here he is. Like we said, lots of cool beards. Josiah Strong was a strong believer in social Darwinism and eugenics, but he turned his into a racial thing. And Josiah Strong believed that one day in the future there would be a final competition between all the races of the world. And of course, the strongest, fittest race would survive. And of course, Josiah Strong, being an Anglo-Saxon Protestant, looking around the world around him, where Anglo-Saxon Protestant cultures and civilizations were the most powerful in the world, Great Britain, Germany, the United States, believed that after this terrible racial competition, ethnic competition, Anglo-Saxons, the English, the Americans would emerge victorious. And he did not base this on racism in his own mind. He based it on science. He would look at evidence, make charts, do data, and find out scientifically that white Anglo-Saxon Protestants were destined one day to rule the world. All of these things fit together. It's a fundamental belief in science. Take you where the evidence goes, whether it's social Darwinism and Josiah Strong, take you where the evidence for efficient factories takes you, take you where efficiency and science goes with pragmatism, and all the way back to take you where science and pragmatism and scientific experimentation and progressive improvement take you to eugenics. This was the heart of the progressive movement. Use science. Disinterested science. Science who didn't care black, white, or purple. Use science to improve the world.